Shalom, on the self, souls by giving no praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and honors to brothers doing the work, the most in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name of who in the world ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. His own true name is Yahushua. And when we pray Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, meaning in, meaning the, and Shem, meaning names Yahweh, and the name of Yahushua. Real quick, I'm just looking for, a topic, and I came across this video, right, where you have basically what looks, if I walk past her, I'll be just like, yeah, it's just Becky, right? I mean, even one of the comments was saying, imagine the kind of stuff, she overhears when, you people don't realize that she's, as they call in this world, mixed or biracial. Okay, which we understand that there's no such thing as either of those words, because you are what your father is, right? So Numbers 1:18, it says, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families, but the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upwards, by their polls, right? So basically, you are what your father is, right? And that helps solve all of this confusion, right? Because you'll have certain people that, I'm a quarter this, no, you are what your father is, right? And that just makes the whole lineage different, lineage simple, Salakia, right? So this is an example of one where actually says later on in the video that her but you basically her brother looks black, so basically she looks white and her brother looks black. But really, when you kind of look at it, like, you can kind of tell that there are certain aspects about her that you can be like, actually, no, you can kind of just about see that, she is, once again, as they say in this world, mixed. Okay. But it just goes to show you, the power of the Lord also goes into, this idea of, the scattering, if you will. Okay. Because Israel scattered all over the world, looking any, any which way. What? So let me grab this. Is Jeremiah 12 and 9. It says, mine heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. Right, the birds round about are against her. Come ye assemble, all of the beasts of the field, come to devour. Right, speckled bird. Right, this is a bird that is looked down upon, blemished and unblemished. The birds round about are against her. The other nations come to devour. Right, the other nations devour the children of Israel. Okay, and that's it. We're looked down upon as a nation, right? And what's the other thing? It doesn't come to mind at the moment, but yeah, just, like, so when you look at this girl, right, you wouldn't necessarily even think, right, that they were, if you was to walk past her, you wouldn't necessarily think that, this is an Israelite, well, not Israel, because she says her father is so-called white, so we'll just go by the father being a white, that she's actually an Edomite, right? But we understand, once again, just the whole purpose of this video just really being that Israel's going to look like everything, right? And this is an example of the other side, right? Because, for instance, the scripture says about the wheat and the tares, right? So let's grab this, right? Matthew 13, right? It says, Matthew 13 from 24 says, among, and once again, reason I'm bringing this up, because she says that her brother, right, looks, so-called black, right? Which, once again, either way, Bob Marley's an example. She could still be a Jake, right? And that's just the thing. But just, going off of face value, if you will, right? This is Matthew 13:24. Right, it says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also, right? And so that's, people that look like Jakes but are really Edomites, right? So once again, just going off of what we have in face value, right? She said that her father's a so-called white man, but then her brother looks like a so-called a black man, okay? So even, reminds me of, someone that I've met, where it's like, you look at them, right, you just see a so-called black person, but when you speak to them, you realize that they're from a so-called mixed family, right? Mom being a so-called black woman, the dad being a so-called white man. But even that person, they were just a nigger woman, right? Just going to show you that this thing of ours ain't carnal. It's very much a spiritual thing, right? This is real quick. Romans 8:16. It says the Spirit itself beareth with a witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, right? So it's all about the Spirit. It's all about observing what how things are spiritually, okay? Because it's when you're just moving in the carnal realm, right? You miss certain things, right? Because once again, she says her father's a so-called a white man. She could still be a J, right? But like I said, I just found this very interesting because this is we see we focus also on like the other version, right, where it's just like it's like, for instance, a couple generations, right? It's not often that I kind of see this where it's like one generation where it's like parents are this and then the child looks basically like an Edomite, okay? But let's carry on in Matthew 13, right? It says, verse 26, but when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, right, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? Right? He said unto them, an enemy hath done this. Right? The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So that's it. You're gonna have people that look like Israelites, like she says, her brother, right? That their lineage, right? Because really, I'm just saying, because I'm not, I'm just going off of what I see here. No idea what doesn't do much in the vids. I can't be like, I could be a Jake or whatever. Just going off of what is, what the information that I have, right? But from the video, her brother would be a tear, right? Because her father is a so-called white man, but her brother is fully black. So, yeah, but her brother is black, right? Just going to show, this is the power of the Lord, which is why also it's just like, like mentioned just before, right? The need to be spiritual, right, in these kinds of matters, right? And then also you then have people that'll be like, oh, but Jacob and Esau, you say, how they had the same parents, how can they look different, right? Well, this is this is an example. Once again, you can just about tell she's got something in her, like now it's like, okay, cool, she's mixed or whatever. You can be like, actually no, I can see that. But the fact that she looks like a so-called white woman and her brother looks like a so-called black man, right, it's just what the Most High can do, right? So Genesis 25:24, and when her days to be fulfilled, right, both and when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The verse came out red all over, like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob, right? And Isaac was 60 years when she bare them, right? Now, why didn't it mention how Jacob looked? Because Jacob looked normal. Everyone was melanated back then, right? But Esau had a condition called leprosy, right? I.e., basically what you see here, right? That translucent skin, right, where the blood shows forth, right? So Numbers 12:10, it says, and the cloud departed off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous, right? So to look like that is a curse, right? It's not a good thing, okay? Yet in this world, what has Esau done? He's basically made that the image of beauty, right? But we are of the understanding that that is nothing but a lie, okay? So like I said, I just wanted to touch on that real quick, just on the, because it's not regularly that I see it take just one generation for the child to look completely different. Here, the parents are a bit different than what we normally focus on, but then also we got to touch on the fact that despite her father being a so-called white man, she could still be a Jake, right? Because it really isn't about appearance, and this is an example of that, right? Because once again, her brother, had the rather her had the parents been different, we would have just thought that, oh yeah, cool, she's a white woman, right? But these times we'll be like, oh, she's a Jake. Okay, but just goes to show just how these how these things works, man. Found it a little bit interesting. So as always, was edifying. Till next time we say shalom.